A place to call home can be peace and joy and safety. So how to find housing while traveling or in Mexico is an imperative piece of information to have. And as slow travelers is such a vital part of who we are. This is one of the main things that I wanted to know before I started traveling, and even though this one's specifically to Mexico, I do think that it applies to most places that you travel to, with each country having a little bit of a nuance. And I thought I'd take advantage of this beautiful sunshine to chat with you guys. There's so many ways to find lodging and so many ways that you can make your dream possible, because traveling doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg, and traveling does not need to look any one particular way. Like the other day, somebody asked me if my travels were only between 2 countries. And guess what? Travel can look any way you want it to look. And I personally have been loving exploring Mexico. So don't let anybody judge you, because it can look any way you want it to. And I hope to show you so many ways for you to find places to live so you can find what best suits you. I'm gonna start with the most common ones and move down the list to the more trendy ones, or the ones that not everybody knows about. And more importantly, the ones that people don't really think that they can do with kids. So I am a single mom, so that'll be part of my explanation. I forgot my tea. Okay, we'll make it together later, but let's get going. So the first one is hotels. Obviously, everybody knows how to find a hotel, but I think one of the more interesting things about finding hotels is that in certain countries, not everybody is listed on all the sites. I feel like in the US, for the most part, you can go on any hotel site and find any hotel, but I've noticed that there's certain sites that are more popular in each country. So I do go through all the sites every time I'm going to go to a new country. If you're new to me, first of all, I'm Karen, and I've been traveling full-time with my kids for the past 6 years. And as the commenter noticed, I don't go to a lot of countries because I travel slowly. So we've traveled through 42 states in the US. Yeah, I know that's not a lot. And we've traveled through a lot of Mexico. But we've also been to Puerto Rico, Guatemala, Turks and Caicos, Venezuela, and every time we go, I try to find new ways to find a livable place. And right now we're in Miami, and I am on the search for a short-term lease because we're only going to be here for 3 months, and the place that I have to stay at now might not last for the whole 3 months. I feel like finding homes is imperative. If you saw my last video, I'm really big on nesting, especially while traveling with kids, because this is our life. It's not a vacation. So being uncomfortable every day and not feeling at home every day is just not optimal for growth and happiness in general. So where else have I found hotels? Well, Facebook would be one. I have found that a lot of hotels would list their business on Facebook, and then you can communicate through WhatsApp. They don't. Now, I'm not talking about Facebook Marketplace. I'm just talking about a Facebook page. Most hotels or lodging facilities will create a Facebook page, where they post their pictures and trending subjects in general. And sometimes you could just communicate with them through there. If you don't feel comfortable using WhatsApp because, it could be a scam, you could also use Messenger. Or sometimes you can find them through Facebook, confirm they are who they are, and then contact them directly. I find that I've gotten the best pricing contacting them directly. Because especially in Guatemala, I think it was, the fees were removed. So I think I got it like 30% cheaper. On the other hand, in the US, sometimes it's a lot cheaper on the sites. So in the US, I would travel around, find a hotel I liked, ask them how much it would be to stay there a night, and they go on the site and book it because the site would usually be cheaper. Now, in some places, hotels can be a long-term destination, because if the hotel is independently owned, I'm not talking about a Hilton or a Marriott or that kind of thing, they might be able to rent it for you. I think it's important to always ask and not assume that the rules that apply in the United States will apply in another country. So if you're looking for, let's say, a month rental and you're at a hotel that you really like, I would ask. You never know. And I feel like they're a lot more flexible. For them, it's a great deal for you to stay long term if they don't have heavy foot traffic. Obviously, that probably wouldn't be the case in Cancun, but I remember during the pandemic, there were a lot of people that were able to get longer stays in the hotels because a lot of the hotels were empty. I think I would say that this kind of idea also applies to Airbnb. I find that Airbnb, because of the ridiculous fees that it now has, the fees just keep growing, it feels like. I know when I listed my Airbnb in Mexico, the fees I had to pay that were undisclosed until somebody actually rented it were like 30% of my listing. So, I always imagined that what was charged over the rental fee that you put was the taxes to the client and the cleaning fees and things like that. Turns out that you will also get taxed depending on the situation. So my recommendation for booking an Airbnb, try to book it for the minimum amount of days, meeting the actual host, and then taking it from there. Some hosts are open to renting to you from outside of the app, some won't, but I think it's mutually beneficial in a lot of cases to rent off app. So if you are looking for an Airbnb, you find one that you really like, you can do that. And I know a lot of people that do that long term. They'll rent it for the first month. I personally would rent it for a few days, but they would rent it for the first month and then ask if they can strike a deal off of Airbnb. Now, aside from, so I have a few problems with Airbnb. One is the fact that it's quite expensive. I think the prices are set based on being a tourist. And even though I travel full time, I don't consider myself a tourist because I slow travel, so I live in places for a long time. So that is one problem I have with Airbnb. The other problem I have with Airbnb is that it really does contribute heavily to gentrification, and for the same reason, because they price it so high and it starts making rents go up in each location. Another reason that I stopped Airbnb. But I do understand the comfort that comes along with renting through Airbnb. It's a big company that can afford to give you back your money on occasion, even though I hear horror stories about people not getting their money back when they're supposed to. So it does give you a bit of a peace of mind. Also, I find that not everybody that rents really has a North American mindset in mind. So if you're looking for that style of rental, like everything provided, you don't have to pay any utilities, fully furnished, like ready, 100% ready to go, and with a host that is taking care of your needs all the time, then I do recommend Airbnb. If you're a little bit more laid back and are okay with taking care of things yourself, and maybe even acquire some furniture yourself, then I would not recommend Airbnb. Now, what I personally use the most is Facebook Marketplace, and it's kind of what I've been using here in Miami to try to find somewhere to rent. And this is because I have found the most economical rentals to be in Facebook Marketplace. Now, obviously, you have to be aware of scams at all periods of your life, anything that has to do with the internet. Disclaimer, please be aware of scammers. Anybody can scam you in any way that you find an apartment, so be cautious. Do your research, and if you're gonna meet somebody, don't come alone. Try not to go to less than desirable neighborhoods or neighborhoods that have a reputation for not being safe, things like that. Just be aware. In San Cristobal de las Casas, Mexico, that we've been using as our home base for the past 2 years, when I first started looking for apartments in Facebook Marketplace, the location of the place was not necessarily clear. And I remember hopping in a cab one day and tell them where I want to go, and the cab driver's like, that's a dangerous area. We don't even go there past 5 p.m. because we're scared of getting shot at. So obviously that deterred me. I would say now, after 2 years, that was a little sensationalized. But I do believe that there, depending on how you look, they worry more about you, like you're more prone to, you know, being taken advantage of, so they're quick to like give you advice. And I always take the advice because they could be wrong, but they could also be right. Don't be brave at the very beginning. Like once you get comfortable, you can feel it out yourself, but there's no need to be brave at the very beginning and say, no, I know that I will not get shot. Because you don't. Just be careful when using Facebook Marketplace. But I do like that you're able to see houses of people that will not be working with a real estate agent, and you kind of see what you get for your buck because the price is listed on there and it's full transparency. Okay, my throat is drying up a little bit, so let's go get some tea. Thank you, John, for my tea today. It's a little hot. I'll wait. Do you find that drinking tea or coffee while the sunshine is peeking through the window and you can feel the warmth on your skin, it's just fantastic? It's the little things. It's the little things. I feel like once you stop and pay attention to the little things, everything has more depth. Anyways, where were we? While we're on the subject of Facebook, I would say Facebook groups are also fantastic. Same thing applies as Facebook Marketplace, just be careful for scammers. But there are a lot of groups titled San Chris Rental, Querétaro Rentals, or any deviation of that. So everywhere I go, I try to find as many of those groups as possible. Now, as much as I love the home that we live in now, I have not felt the same way about all the houses, especially our very first one. The second one I did like a lot. The only problem I found with my second one was that I wasn't in a completely private room. My room led to two other rooms, and both bathrooms were inside those rooms. If you haven't seen that video, I'll tag it below. But I was not a fan of that because I didn't have privacy. Both my kids got the other two bedrooms, and in a sense they didn't have privacy either because if I had to use the bathroom, I had to go to through their bedrooms. So that brings me to try not to book a place right away. Take your time. Don't be in a rush to sign a 1-year lease. I feel like a lot of people that go to Mexico, they're not necessarily travelers. They actually just want to find a home. And when you're in a new country, there's so many things to learn, and I feel like that adjustment period is necessary before you find your forever home. Maybe you get lucky, but maybe you need to understand where you are, the different neighborhoods, how the people interact before you actually pick where you want to live. So I really do recommend that you start with short rentals and move your way up to longer ones. Now, when you don't know the area, getting a real estate agent is a great idea. I personally found that in Mexico, because when you rent from an agent, they kind of become the middleman for the rest of your contract. So if something breaks, you're supposed to tell the real estate agent, like they're supposed to facilitate things for the homeowner. I am not a fan of that. I feel like it just makes things so much more complicated, and I much prefer dealing directly with a homeowner. I feel the homeowner wants to keep its house in good condition, so if you bring anything to their attention, they're more attentive. So I don't necessarily suggest getting a real estate agent, but if you do get a real estate agent, just make sure you understand what kind of service they're providing. Because I didn't have to pay for the real estate agent to help me, and they didn't really explain why, but then it turned out that it was because they were getting a huge cut out of my rent and not helping me when I needed it. Now, I have many other videos in which I've discussed like specific things that happen in Mexico when you're renting that you need to be aware of. So I will, refer to those. But just be aware that when you sign a contract in Mexico, it's your legal right to have it translated to whatever language you speak. And this is because there's so many languages spoken in Mexico. If they don't do that, the contract is not valid. And the other thing is, sometimes they'll have you signed notes that are equivalent to cash that you can be heavily persecuted for. So those are things that I will be aware of. Getting a lawyer in Mexico is really reasonably priced. So I always suggest that. And I did rent my last home with a lawyer. The lawyer reviewed my lease terms, adjusted a few things, and I have had zero problem. It was completely worth the investment. It helps you to walk around. A lot of these places will list things on flyers, in restaurants. So there's a lot of restaurants that we have a wall full of flyers, not only for activities like yoga or classes or workshops and things like that, but also for rentals. I also was told when I first started traveling to walk around and see houses with signs outside. I find that this does not work for everybody because there are neighborhoods that are close to outsiders or tourists or extranjeros, and they'll just tell you no. That happened to me. I also discussed that in some of the other videos. I feel like if they're open to anybody, they'll list it more openly than a sign on their door. If they have a sign on their door, in my opinion, it's most likely because they want somebody from the neighborhood to live there. I have walked down the street asking houses. I think we asked about 8, and the gentleman that was looking for a home was from Guadalajara, but he was still told no because he was still from outside of the barrio. Now, aside from hotels, I just mentioned hostels. I think hostels are a great way, depending your circumstance, to travel or to find places to live. And this is because they don't only offer you a bed to sleep in, but a lot of them have work exchange situations in which you work for them in exchange for lodging, sometimes even food, and sometimes you even get paid. So it's a great trade-off depending the kind of person that you are. I personally don't stay in hostels because I travel with 2 teen girls. I find it a lot safer to find somewhere a little bit more private, but I am open to it depending where we are because they do offer private rooms. I just find that the shared kitchen and the shared facilities and that kind of thing doesn't work for my family. But if I traveled alone, I'd be totally into that because you can create new connections and meet new people that are like-minded and like to do the same things you do. So to summarize, my recommendation for getting a place in somewhere like Mexico, it would be first get something really short like hotel, hostel, something they can get for a couple of nights. You can explore the city, boots on ground kind of situation. And then you can go around, see if you find some flyers in some of the restaurants, check Facebook Marketplace, check Facebook groups. If you really want somebody to walk you through the process, then find a real estate agent, but otherwise don't. Find a lawyer, a local lawyer. And for local lawyer recommendations, I would ask in either expat Facebook groups or traveler Facebook groups or just international communities on Facebook. And then most importantly, I would say that keep in mind the cultural differences, right? As you're looking for a home, what's important to you will not be what's important to everybody in the world. That's just not how it works. So keep that in mind as you're looking for a place because the things that are available to you will change from town to town. Even in a country like Mexico, the country is humongous, and the culture from state to state varies so much. And I find that the way they communicate is also very different. I think this translates in renting a home. So, that's why it's very important to keep an open mind as you travel and don't assume things. And I think the lawyer helps with the not assuming thing. He taught me a lot. For example, did you know that if you rent a house, all the light bulbs are working? When you give it back, you have to have all new light bulbs as well. I did not know that, but if there's any light bulbs that have burned out in your home while you were living in it, when you move out, they can keep part of your deposit because of your light bulbs. So it's important to know how everything operates in each country that it is you're going to. Keep your mind open as you look for a home and try to learn as many nuances as you can, so when you rent a home, you know exactly what you're getting, or at least for the most part, because everything is always a learning curve. Now I want to move on to some slightly more uncommon ways to find homes, because having a home does not necessarily mean the same thing to everybody. So let's start with swaps. There's groups on Facebook, and I believe there's apps in which you can swap homes with people that have similar interests in you or things like that. For example, I'm part of a worldschooling community because of my children, and we use that a lot to find like-minded individuals. One of the things that people in the worldschooling community do is, let's say they live in the United States and they have a 3-bedroom house and they want to go to Mexico, they'll pull a call out to see if anybody in Mexico with a 3-bedroom house would like to swap. These can be for a few weeks, but it could also be for many months. If you don't have a home to swap, you could also do house sitting and pet sitting. And we did this when we started traveling through the US, and it was an amazing experience. Now for us, it's not something we would do like long term. I mean, we did it for 2 years, so I guess we did do it for long term. But it does get old because it's not like you can decorate your own room when you're taking care of somebody else's house. But we would take care of homes between 3 weeks to 5 weeks. First of all, the experience of taking care of pets, like we took care of cows and pigs and dogs and cats and an array of animals, and that experience was amazing. But aside from that, we got to stay like in actual neighborhoods, so it made our travels so much less touristy. We got to meet the homeowners, which was pretty spectacular. Like, we got to learn from the places that we traveled to. And I know like some people don't think that traveling through the United States is that diverse, but I found it super diverse. Like, if you're new to me, I'm from Venezuela and I moved to the United States when I was 10 years old, but we moved to Miami, which is so diverse. So we kept our Latin culture at home at all times. So when I started leaving Miami, to me, the United States was like seeing the world. There's so many different cultures to me and so much to learn. That's kind of how I felt when we were house sitting. Every place that we went to was so incredible and so different, and there was just so much to learn. We had an experience in Ithaca, which we were taking care of a self-sustaining home or eco-friendly home, and we had like a wood burning stove, and we got a blizzard and we had snow up to our hip. And then we also took care of a home in the Grand Canyon. Like, it was for one of the rangers inside the Grand Canyon. So we woke up and we had elk outside our window. Like, the only reason I opened the window was because I heard the noise. So it was extraordinary. It was really extraordinary. So I highly recommend house sitting. And I did it with my 2 children. So they seemed to be open to it. I explained that we travel as a form of education, and a lot of the houses we stayed at were parents of homeschool kids. Don't ever not try something because you think that it will not happen. Because you don't know. You just don't know. So I totally recommend that you try it. People are more open-minded than you think. Another thing that a lot of people seem to do is couch surfing. I have personally never done it, and I would think that it's the kind of thing that you need to do alone, but I've heard families in the worldschooling community that do it with kids. Now, granted, it's little kids, but still, again, you never know. Now, last but not least is workaway and farm stay, which kind of like hostels, you can exchange labor for a place to stay and sometimes food. Now, these are both platforms, and there are gazillions of new platforms available every year. So I would definitely, if I'm planning on traveling somewhere, I will join local groups of maybe travelers that are in, let's say I'm going to Guatemala, I'll join groups that have travelers that are in Guatemala, or expats that are in Guatemala, or just people in Guatemala. And I would find out the kind of things that they have available. Swapping work for a place to stay is not a new concept. It has been around for many, many years. So I think it's a great opportunity to get a place to live in a new town. And even if it's for short term, as you figure out what areas of town you want to live in or how you want your life to look. I always say try as many ways, same end goal as you can, because you never really know how you're gonna get there. And whatever idea it is that you have of how something works isn't always realistic and isn't always how it works everywhere. So I try to as many ways as possible, and one of them is bound to work. And if it doesn't, know that you can recalculate and move in another direction, or try again, or do it differently, or go back. You can always go back. Now, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I can always do a follow-up video answering you guys' questions, or if you have any recommendations for the people watching, please do share. I feel like everybody that has experience getting a new home in a new place that is not their homeland or where they're from learned so much through the process that I'm sure you have a lot to share. So please feel free to share. And if you found any of this helpful, please subscribe and like and share and all the things. And thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. Bye.